We keep talking about the guys. But what I've tried to employ the female members of my family, some of who you all met and talked to and what have you, is that, again, and this is what I've done this all my life, let's make sure we don't do anything to provoke wrong actions.
He's hearing that black folks find him relatable because what he's going through is similar to what black Americans have gone through. He wasn't lying. It is something that black folks throughout this nation can relate to with some of our historic, iconic figures. We relate to you when you're suffering like that because we know we have.
Screaming to Smith. Yeah, I said it. Stephen A. Smith didn't just build his name, he built a whole empire out of being loud, bold, and impossible to ignore. For over 20 years, this man has been the face and the voice of fiery takes, heated debates, and unapologetic confidence. His fans praise him for always keeping it real, while his critics, they've had enough of that booming voice and never-ending opinions.
The day that solidified Stephen A. Smith as a coon and a sellout for me personally was when he came to speak at UConn during spring semester of my junior year, okay? And he was showing inklings of him being a coon prior to that, right? He would have Will Cain on First Take regularly, and then Will Cain would say some insanely racist shit. Like, just not even cloaked, right? Just blatantly racist. And Stephen A. would then defend Will Cain the next day, talking about, I don't think he's racist. You know what I'm saying? It's just a different point of view. It's like, okay, I'm not sure why you want to die on that hill, but I guess that's your coworker. I'm going to shoot you some bail, even though I really shouldn't have in hindsight, right?
In this era where chaos sells and controversy equals clicks, Stephen A. mastered the formula better than anyone. He knows exactly how to stir things up, shout a little louder, act a little prouder, and boom, headlines everywhere. But behind all that fame, there's a growing crowd of people who just can't stand his flashy ways. They say his mouth moves faster than his morals, and his ego, it's louder than the mic itself. Best of you so damn messy, someone snapped during a heated moment. You sound like one of them people is what you sound like. And honestly, that's when it hits. Are we even doing real celebrity journalism anymore? Or just feeding the drama machine he helped build? We're supposed to keep it professional, right? But when it comes to Stephen A., professionalism seems to melt right into pure entertainment every single time. Stephen A. has always been loud, opinionated, and absolutely allergic to silence. But in 2014, that booming voice finally crossed the line his reputation couldn't recover from, at least not right away. During a fiery debate on First Take about the NFL's weak punishment of Ray Rice after he assaulted his then-fiancée, Stephen decided to open his mouth on the topic of domestic violence. And that's when everything went downhill fast. He started talking about how women should avoid provoking men. Yes, provoke. The man who argues with himself on live TV thought that was the point worth making. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. Viewers froze, Twitter exploded, and within hours, Stephen A. Smith became public enemy number one. It wasn't just random fans dragging him either. Even his ESPN colleague Michelle Beadle jumped in with surgical precision. She tweeted that she'd been forced to watch First Take before dropping two brutal lines that would haunt him for weeks. A, I'll never feel clean again. B, I'm not aware that I can provoke my own beating. Ouch. That was a knockout tweet if there ever was one. The internet went wild, calling him tone deaf, careless, and downright disrespectful. It was the kind of controversy that spread like wildfire. One careless sentence and boom, his credibility went up in smoke. For a man who lives by his word, Stephen A. learned the hard way that sometimes talking too much can turn applause into outrage overnight. Michelle's tweet cut straight through Stephen's ego like a hot knife through pride. Her words echoed exactly what millions of viewers were already thinking. Violence isn't the victim's issue, it's the abuser's. To even hint otherwise, totally irresponsible and downright disgusting. And once she hit send, the internet erupted. The backlash was fast, fierce, and unforgiving. Stephen found himself under fire like never before. Suddenly, the man who always had a comeback was scrambling to defend himself. The debates were gone. This was survival mode. He was forced to issue a public apology, admitting that his comments were out of line, and that he never meant to suggest women were responsible for their own abuse. His voice, usually booming with confidence, cracked on live TV. His tone softened. And for the first time in a long time, Stephen A. Smith, the king of confrontation, wasn't the loudest person in the room. Just one day later, ESPN made their move. Suspension for a week. The network's top executive released a memo trying to cool things down, saying the decision came after thoughtful discussion and that they believed Stephen's apology was genuine. But that didn't stop the damage. The whole world had already seen his armor crack. Psychologically, that moment revealed something way deeper about Stephen. For years, he'd built his empire on being the man who always had the last word, the final say, the ultimate mic drop. But that day, his obsession with winning the argument blinded him from reading the room. He projected that same loud, hyper-masculine energy society often mistakes for wisdom, and it finally backfired. There was something almost tragic about watching it unfold. The same audience that once cheered for his confidence now looked at him and saw nothing but arrogance and ego. The fall was loud, shocking, and painfully human. The very network that fed off Stephen's chaos suddenly had to clean up the wildfire it helped spark. ESPN built its empire on his fiery debates and explosive energy, but now they had to put that fire out fast. For the first time in years, Stephen A. and his big mouth were forced into silence. A whole week without a single rant, no hot takes, no shouting matches, nothing. But let's be real, knowing Stephen, that man was probably at home arguing with the mirror, rehearsing debates with himself just to keep the fire burning. "Bassy, you a damn fool," someone joked, laughing mid-conversation. "You know he did." And honestly, yeah, you know he did. The man can't go one day without a verbal sparring match. But then out of nowhere came a wild line that had everyone clutching their pearls. What's harder, getting Stephen to shut up or keeping Shannon Sharp's zipper up around a room full of 20-somethings? "Manzi, what is wrong with you, girl?" came the instant reaction, shocked and half laughing. "What in the entire world is wrong with you today?" The tension, the humor, the chaos, it was pure behind-the-scenes madness. Even when Stephen wasn't on air, the drama didn't stop. It just shifted to the people around him. Anyway, Stephen A. Smith has never met a microphone he didn't want to argue with. The man could debate a stop sign and still find a way to make it personal, but this time, Twitter didn't just clap back. It devoured him like a dry Popeye's biscuit with no drink in sight. It all kicked off when Stephen decided to jump into the Black Lives Matter conversation. And instead of joining the movement, he completely missed the point. He tweeted, "Where's all the noise about hashtag Black Lives Matter when black folks are killing black folks?" And just like that, boom, the internet went nuclear. See, what Stephen failed to understand is that the issue isn't about who commits the crime, it's about why the system reacts so differently depending on who's involved. According to FBI data, in 2018, 88% of black victims were killed by black offenders, but 80% of white victims were killed by white offenders too. The same pattern shows up every year. It's not a black problem, it's a proximity problem. People are most likely to be harmed by those around them, the people they live near, work with, or know personally. Yet when it happens in white communities, it's just called crime. But when it happens in black communities, it suddenly becomes black on black violence, a whole national talking point used to distract from real conversations about racism and justice. The hypocrisy screams louder than any sports debate Stephen's ever had, and that's exactly where he fumbled the bag. Instead of using his massive platform to uplift a movement fighting against systemic injustice, he ended up echoing one of the oldest, most damaging myths about Black America. His tweet wasn't just tone deaf, it was disappointing because a man with his reach should have known better. People saw straight through Stephen A. Smith like glass. He wasn't just giving opinions, he was playing the role of the so-called respectable black man, trying to reason with white America by separating himself from his own community. For men like Stephen, Validation from the establishment often feels safer than standing shoulder to shoulder with their own people, and that's where the disconnect begins. Then came Game 6 of the 2016 NBA Finals. Emotions were flying higher than Draymond Green's temper after a bad call. The Golden State Warriors had just taken a gut-wrenching loss, and Aisha Curry, the outspoken and fiercely loyal wife of Steph Curry, hopped on Twitter to vent. She tweeted that the streets were rigged, and instantly the internet blew up. Everyone had something to say: fans, reporters, and of course Stephen A. Smith. When that tweet hit First Take, Stephen didn't hold back. He went on air and told Aisha she stepped out of line, claiming that her words reflected poorly on her husband and his team. Then he threw in some extra salt by calling her comments classless. Translation? He basically told her to hush up and let her man take the loss like a champ while she stayed quiet on the sidelines. But Stephen didn't stop there. Gildo, oh no, he doubled down. He decided to compare Aisha Curry to LeBron James's wife, Savannah, praising Savannah for staying quiet during games and never drawing attention to herself. He said Savannah knew her place, and that's when things went left. For no reason at all, he turned what could have been a conversation about frustration in sports into a lesson on how women should behave. The reaction? Instant outrage. Social media tore him apart for pitting two Black women against each other and reinforcing outdated ideas about how women, especially wives, should act in public. Stephen thought he was dropping wisdom, but instead he just reignited a firestorm that made him look totally out of touch. Stephen A. went completely off the rails, straight into a tangent nobody asked for. He started gushing about how beautiful Savannah James was, saying, "Ain't a man alive, especially a Black man, who wouldn't say that woman is gorgeous." Now hold up. What her looks had to do with anything that was being discussed, nobody could figure out. It was like he turned a basketball debate into a beauty contest, and the crowd wasn't amused one bit. Aisha Curry wasn't about to let that slide either. She fired right back on Twitter, asking why Stephen felt the need to pit two women against each other just to make a point. And honestly, she had a valid question. His comments didn't just come off as tone deaf. They exposed the double standard women, especially Black women, still deal with every single day. They're expected to be polished, quiet, and supportive, never opinionated, never emotional, never too real. So when Aisha dared to speak her mind, Stephen instantly reached for every tired stereotype in the book, labeling her as out of line and too outspoken, like she was supposed to just smile and stay in the background. It was the same old narrative that society refuses to let go of. And coming from someone with Stephen's platform, it hit even harder. By this point, Stephen wasn't just stirring controversy, when he was collecting outrage like frequent flyer miles. But 2017 brought a different kind of clapback. Not from fans, not from Twitter, but from someone with power. That year, the response came stamped and official, right on letterhead. "Get him, Lamar," someone said, and oh, Lamar did not hold back. It all kicked off when Stephen A. decided to let his mouth run wild again on First Take. In one of his fiery rants about Phil Jackson's disastrous run as president of the New York Knicks, Stephen started tearing into every move Phil ever made. But then he took it way too far. While questioning Jackson's decision to sign Lamar Odom near the end of the 2013 to 2014 season, Stephen blurted out, "Since Lamar was on crack." Yes, he actually said that live on national television. The studio went silent, social media went crazy, and before long, Lamar Odom had his lawyer on the phone. A few days later, a letter landed on ESPN's desk, written with precision sharp enough to cut glass. In that letter, Lamar's lawyer made it clear Lamar had passed all his physicals and medical tests before joining the Knicks, meaning Stephen's comment wasn't just wrong, it was reckless and damaging. The real issue wasn't just the inaccuracy, it was the cruelty. Stephen had turned Lamar's long, painful battle with addiction into a cheap punchline for laughs. Lamar had been transparent about his struggles with drugs and alcohol. He'd even publicly admitted to fighting addiction years before that tragic 2015 incident where he was found unconscious in a Nevada brothel. The letter called Stephen's remark tasteless and deeply disrespectful, pointing out how using someone's pain for entertainment crossed every line of decency. Lamar might not have ever played an official game for the Knicks, but in the court of public opinion, he absolutely won this round. Because sometimes you don't have to scream louder than Stephen A. Smith. You just let a sharp lawyer and a well-written letter speak for you. The man who built his name on words finally got silenced by paperwork. Boom! Another controversy exploded right on live TV. During a 2017 episode of First Take, Stephen A. Smith once again let his mouth get ahead of his mind. This time, the target was Japanese MLB superstar Shohei Ohtani, who was then playing for the Los Angeles Angels. And let's just say that what came out of Stephen's mouth aged terribly. He said Ohtani can't be the face of baseball because he uses an interpreter. Then he doubled down saying, I understand baseball is an international sport, but when your number one face is a dude who needs an interpreter so people can understand what he's saying in this country, that doesn't help. The internet collectively gasped and then dragged him with no mercy. Within hours, social media was in flames. People called his comments tone deaf, ignorant, and flat out offensive. Even former ESPN commentator Keith Olbermann stepped in, calling for Stephen's suspension and saying his words were not only wrong, but dangerous. Fans pointed out how hypocritical it was for Stephen, a black man who's spoken about racial stereotypes, to turn around and mock someone else for a language barrier. Stephen tried to clean it up, saying he didn't mean it as a personal attack on Shohei, but rather as a comment on baseball's marketing problem. But that only made things worse. The damage was already done. People weren't buying it. By Monday night, reality hit him hard. The fire was too big to ignore. Stephen released an official apology saying, as an African American keenly aware of the damage stereotyping has done to many in this country, I should have been more sensitive. I screwed up. Then, the very next day, he took it to First Take and doubled down on the apology live on air. Voice lower, face serious, finally realizing that not every hot take is worth the heat. It was one of those rare, humbling moments when Stephen A. Smith had to swallow his own words. No debate, no excuses, just eat them cold. He admitted that what he said about Shohei Ohtani was insensitive and regrettable, adding that he was truly sorry for any harm his words had caused. For once, the man who never stops talking had to sit in silence and take accountability, and that silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Shohei, the man at the center of all the chaos, stayed cool, calm, and completely unbothered. While the media stormed around Stephen, Shohei was out there making history. That same week, he became the first Japanese-born player to compete in the MLB Home Run Derby, and his bat did all the talking. He didn't need to tweet, clap back, or comment. His performance said everything: grace, focus, and quiet dominance. Then out of nowhere, Zara snapped, "Stephen, your big ashy mouth needs to shut off," she shouted, breaking the tension and sending everyone into laughter. But deep down, there was truth in that heat. Stephen just couldn't help himself, because if you ever want a masterclass in how to turn one bad moment into a full-blown PR disaster, just study Stephen A. Smith. Fast forward to April 2024. He sat down with Fox News' Sean Hannity and did something absolutely nobody asked for. He defended Donald Trump's wild claim that Black people could relate to being persecuted by the legal system. The internet gasped again because only Stephen could take a comeback and somehow spin it right back into controversy. "Stephen, shut your big mouth up," Chad yelled, fed up and laughing at the same time. "I don't know nobody with 34 felonies. No, I cannot relate. No, I cannot." The whole room erupted, and honestly, he wasn't alone. A lot of people were thinking the same thing. Black Twitter went nuclear. They dragged Stephen from every corner of the internet, calling him everything from raccoon to Uncle Tom. Memes, clips, threads, the whole timeline turned into a roast session. And how did Stephen respond to the chaos? By doing what Stephen always does, posting a video on Twitter to explain himself. Big mistake. The damage was done, and the video only made things worse. Folks weren't hearing him anymore. They were done. At the end of the day, his mouth has always been his biggest moneymaker, but this time it reminded everyone that you can be loud, confident, and still dead wrong. The man talks like the volume knob broke off years ago, and his voice stays stuck on maximum. By now, people were joking that Stephen's mouth deserves its own security team and a paycheck separate from ESPN. It's been working overtime for decades. He argues like he's running a nonstop filibuster, and maybe that's the plan, because lately he's been getting louder, bolder, and way more political with his takes. It's almost like he's testing the waters, not for another sports debate, but for something bigger. Maybe a run for office. Oh no, Stephen, please, no. Fix it, Black Jesus, someone groaned, half laughing, half praying for mercy. Because at this point, Stephen A. Smith really seems to believe conservatives are about to rally behind him, his loud, opinionated, spotlight-chasing self. But come on now, baby, be for real. They'll clap for you on Fox News, smile in your face for ratings. But the second you start talking about reparations or racial bias, they'll drop you faster than a hot mic during a scandal. And yes, Candace Owens, we see you, girl. That's the playbook. They'll use you for the headline, then leave you hanging the moment you step out of line. But knowing Stephen, he'll still take that risk. The man thrives on tension. He loves a heated argument more than he loves being right, and that's saying something. Every time he opens his mouth, he's testing limits, pushing lines, and daring the world to react. But with every bold take, he's losing more of the people who once rooted for him. Fans who used to see him as magnetic now just see him as exhausting. What once made him must-watch TV now makes him hard to stomach. Stephen A. has become that figure everyone loves to hate, burning bridges just to stay in the spotlight, mistaking controversy for connection. The man doesn't just talk, he explodes on cue. And that's exactly why, for better or worse, the world just can't look away.